Welcome to the Relationships Inside Out podcast with Doctors Gregory Siebert and Kimberly Murray, licensed marriage and family therapists. Join them on this journey as they explore the ins and outs of relationships.
Welcome to Relationships Inside Out, where today we're going to talk about betrayal. What a way to start off the new year.
First episode of the new year, we are starting with betrayal, how someone has hurt you, right? Betrayal at its essence is a violation of trust or confidence from another person.
Yep. And you cannot be betrayed if there's no trust in that relationship, because it can happen in all relationships, but if there's no trust there to begin with, you can't be betrayed.
You can be hurt. You can be pissed.
Yeah.
But betrayal requires an emotional investment in the other human that then is violated.
And the extent to which the betrayal impacts us is dependent on the intensity of the relationship.
Sure. And the intensity of the act, right?
Yes.
You can have smaller betrayals up to some very big betrayals.
Yeah, like being lied to by a salesperson or a mechanic. Yeah, that's betrayal, but probably not the same as like a loved one betraying.
Depends on how close you are, right? If I have no investment, I'm just pissed.
Yeah.
Because they screwed me over. If a friend lies to me, that could be a betrayal.
Yeah. Any relationship, and because some relationships might have inherent trust, like if you have inherent trust to a doctor or
for sure.
inherent trust to, a mechanic to take care of your car. Like, I'm trusting you to fix this and you fucked it up. Like, so there's like lesser degrees, but then there's betrayal in a friendship, parent, romantic partner, even children.
So we can talk about abuse or verbal abuse, emotional, physical, mental, sexual, you name it. It can be having an affair. It can be concealing behaviors or actions behind your partner's back, to include porn or finances or relationships.
Substance use,
right?
Yeah.
Any one of those can create betrayal, and how you view that betrayal is absolutely impacted by your life narrative, right? Where have you been wounded before? What were some woundings that happened in your own family?
Yeah.
In previous partnerships, previous friendships?
Yeah.
If someone recreates that, chances are it's going to hit even bigger the second time.
And I love that you add that, because, the intensity of a relationship that we have with somebody is going to affect how we feel that betrayal. But then you add, if that betrayal isn't aligned with some previous trauma, nuclear bomb.
It's beastie. And then the following that is the separation of that first person who betrayed me and the second one. Can I separate them, or am I now putting them into one group, one category?
I mean, typically from a trauma perspective, our brain will do that.
Yeah.
Right. It creates those associations, and it's just kind of under this general umbrella of threat.
Yep.
Right. Especially if there's similar attributes. It's like, nope, you're moving over into that camp.
And then I'm going to completely reject you potentially.
Yeah.
Betrayal is a beast because it gets to our core self. It's not just, you made me sad and now I'm going to move through it. True betrayal, it cuts deep. I'm talking core deep, the kind of wound that you don't just move through in an evening of crying.
Well, and it brings a lot of confusion, right? I feel like the grief process happens in there, because it's like this grief of anticipated life, but also like anticipated who you thought this person was.
Or the safety you had.
Or the safety you had, right? So you're like kind of grieving that, but you're confused of like, wait, I was trusting. And a lot of times in the trust, especially when you have a deep trust, there's a lot of relaxation and things like that. And we would never even fathom. And then it happens. And there's just a lot of confusion. And when we're uncertain about things and we can't make sense of things, but it's very much, betrayal is very much a threat to our existence or system, right? From that standpoint, we try to make meaning. And when we're confused, that meaning part is very important in this process of how are you making sense of this? And a lot of times our mind is going to make sense in a way that protects us. So you'll notice like extremes, like, nope, done. I'm out of this. Fuck.
Cutting off.
And it makes sense. But how do you come back from this when you're reeling this? And it takes time, the emotions, and it might take months. It might take a while to make sense of it. And you may never get a clarity of why this happens. And that person or persons who betrayed you might not even be a good clarity, because they probably don't even know why. Sometimes it's unconscious on their part. Like I think about infidelity, right? I mean, they grew up in generations of infidelity on an unconscious level that's normalized to them. Like, oh, well, that happened to my family. Like, they're still together, or however that played out, right? But to somebody who's never been through that, and that's someone you trust and that's happened, that's huge.
Or they felt lonely, and they felt lonely growing up. And so to combat that feeling of growing up, of being lonely, they went and sought a space in which they weren't lonely.
Yeah.
There's a human quality to this, right? So I often hear people say when they talk about betrayal, whether it's sharing their own narrative or their friends' reflections of that narrative, you'll hear people say like, wow, I'm shocked, or I never knew that they could do that, or that's not who they are, right?
Mm-hmm.
It speaks to how sometimes our behaviors aren't even congruent to our sense of self or how other people perceive us. Because sometimes I'm trying to think of how to describe this, we operate in an automatic or inertia-based way without even thinking about it.
Yeah.
And it can lead to that shock or that dissonance of who we thought this person was versus who their behavior became. Now, I say that while in tandem holding the humanness. So back to what I was saying before.
Yeah.
Just because this behavior is shocking doesn't mean all their good attributes, all their human qualities are gone.
Yeah.
That's the hardest part to hold with betrayal is there's still a human behind that behavior. A human that probably had their own pain, their own loss or trauma or automatic responses that is probably grappling with it too.
Yeah. And oftentimes, I'm not going to say never because there are cases of
Sure.
that, but oftentimes it's not malicious,
Sure.
right? There's this conceptual piece of, oh my God, I know this is hurting them, but I can't stop. You hear that a lot.
Or scared.
Or scared or fearful to bring it up because it's happened once and made the mistake. So when you think about it, like when you think about the humanness, most of the time it's not malicious. Like I'm gonna do, I mean, sometimes it is,
Right.
oftentimes it's not.
Often it's, oh shit, I didn't know I could do that. Or how did I get here? Or whatever it might be, right?
Or I'm shitty at managing my emotions, and these are all my escape things, and it just so happens my escape things are betrayal to my partner. Because there's some subjectiveness to betrayal, right? Because it
Absolutely.
has to depend on how you define it.
Mhm.
Right. So some people might not feel betrayed depending on the
Mhm.
act. They'll be like, oh, yeah. Other people might be devastated. It might be the straw that broke their
Mhm.
relationship, right?
And we've talked about this, right? Even in terms of infidelity. Say there was infidelity in my marriage. That's something I could work through.
Mm-hmm.
Like confident I could work through. Other people, hard stop, would not, could not work through it. It really does speak to the differences in how we perceive the betrayal, the hurt. I think the reason I could work through it is working with clients, I've seen the millions of reasons why it happens, and there's a human quality to it. There is
Yeah.
compassion behind affairs, which can be really hard for people to hear, but there is compassion behind that piece that I hold.
Yeah.
Whereas there's some other betrayals that I don't know if I could forgive, that other people would forgive, no
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah. And so there is subjectiveness to it. And so when
100%.
somebody talks to us about betrayal, just be open to the fact that it may not be significant to you, but to them, that is the most devastating thing. And it's not on your understanding of betrayal, it's the other person's.
So if you're supporting someone in that betrayal space, getting curious why it hurts for them, getting curious about the pieces that sting the most, about what it brings up for them,
Yeah.
rather than giving your value judgment of, oh, it's not that big a deal.
Yeah.
If it wasn't that big a deal to them, they wouldn't be hurting. We can't forget that part. And so if you are wanting to support someone, get curious rather than assumptive is a huge recommendation I have.
And do your best not to judge the person that's betraying, right? You're
Absolutely.
getting one perspective. You don't know what's happening underlying. And even if the person has engaged in some stuff that you're like, oh, that's betrayal, like we talked about, there's humanness under that. Like what was happening for them? Are you able to express compassion for it? Now, when we're talking about understanding the humanness and compassion, we're not talking about reconciling either, right?
And we're not talking about condoning.
Exactly.
This isn't me saying that behavior is okay.
Right.
This is me saying there's still potentially a good person there that just did some shitty things.
Yeah.
But to your point, right? If I forgive someone, if I am actively choosing to let go of the hurt, so forgiveness.
Yeah.
This is the intentional choice of putting down my sword, of not carrying that pain with me. Doesn't mean you don't have emotions after you forgive. You still got to process, but I'm not going to sit there and hold it over that person's head or my head, right? Forgiveness isn't once I forgive, then I'm going to feel happy and joyful. You're still probably going to cry and still have to process and feel and move through it. But it is a sense of releasing. Just because I forgive someone, this is always a misconception, does not mean I have to reconcile. It does not mean I condone their behavior. It doesn't mean everything is a-okay.
Yeah.
I can forgive, which is more for me.
Yeah.
It is a releasing for me than it is for them. I can forgive without having to re-enter that relationship or friendship.
Yeah.
I can forgive without saying like, and your behavior is okay or excusable. That's not true.
One way I think about it, and we talked about this in the forgiveness episode, right? That it's more for us
Yeah.
than it is for the other person. When I think about forgiveness, I think about also like a trauma response in a sense to where, like, how do you know if you forgive someone? I get that question a lot. And it's hard to measure, but one way I think about it is when you bring this up, when you're around this person, what comes up for you doesn't consume you.
Truth.
It doesn't, like, you might have emotions and be like, oh, that sucks. Like we had a really good thing going, or that really sucks, but it doesn't consume you and sends you into like a tizzy. Like it doesn't create this overwhelming response. That's typically a good sign of like, it's not impacting you as much anymore. Like you've kind of sense of moved on, or you're desensitized to it a little bit more.
You're accepting what's happened.
And it's hard to do if we can't see the humanness behind that. And granted, you're not required to. If you're like, I can't see the humanness, that was pure evil, I'm out. That's a decision too, right? And there's probably a couple cases where I can see for myself being like, nope,
100%.
cannot do that. I can't see the humanness about people hurting it, like house animals.
And forgiveness, I don't have to tell the other person I forgive them, by the way. We think of this as a declaration.
No, I needed to know. I'm just kidding.
And it doesn't have to be a declaration. It's a choice within me, not a service given to them, right? In a traditional sense, we think of forgiveness as going to someone and saying, I'm sorry, and then me saying, it's okay. You don't have to say it's okay.
No.
You don't have to say I forgive you, but for your benefit, eventually getting to a place where you can let that burden lay on the table instead of on your shoulders.
Yeah, you can just say, I appreciate you saying sorry. That's it. You don't have to say, that means a lot to me. I accept it. It's okay. Nothing.
And that in of itself can be a coping tool that actually deflects from forgiveness. It's fine. I'm fine.
Yeah.
Are you fine? Because I don't think you're fine, right?
Yeah.
And we see this a lot where people just shove it down and nope, that's just life. Or even like hyper spirituality of if there's betrayal, well, guess that's just part of God's plan for me. Or I deserved it. These kinds of sentences deflect from actually having to process the betrayal and having to lean towards forgiveness. Because now I'm dismissing myself.
And you see in betrayal a lot of gaslighting, especially in like romantic relationships, friendships, even parent-child. I guess a lot of relationships see gaslighting. It's really important to remove yourself from the blame piece. It kind of goes back to our episode on infidelity, right? Like maybe there's some role in kind of the dynamics that might have led to something like that. And sometimes not actually. But it doesn't mean you're at fault for them making the decision they made.
And they might tell you you are. It doesn't make it truth.
It's not your fault. You didn't go force them to go sleep with somebody or cheat on you or go those things.
But you have a responsibility, right? This is where I talk to people about of if someone has an affair, often there's a lead up. You have responsibility for what happened before the affair.
Well, both, yeah, and not just you, right? Both partners.
Both partners, absolutely.
And you only have half of that kind of what was happening. Oh well, I could have done better at.
I was shutting my partner out.
Communicating things like that, right? But it doesn't mean it's your fault.
Facts.
All these things happen in relationships. This stuff is normal stuff. I mean, this is why we have jobs as couples therapists. But you're not responsible for the decision made
100%.
because of that.
Yeah. And I like to offer that distinction because part of affair work in couples therapy is having both partners kind of own the responsibility prior to the affair. The choice of the affair is only on the partner who made the choice, right? They have to own that entirely. But there is often a set of circumstances that led up to that where both people are culpable. And so it's taking that responsibility, but not accountability for their affair.
Yeah, and that's where I feel a lot of the meaning making work comes in the work and betrayal, not just infidelity, but betrayal is understanding maybe dynamics or things that led up to that. And maybe it's not even dynamics between you and that person. It's something like in their childhood life. It doesn't mean, again, you have to condone this, but that understanding and kind of seeing the humanness around these things, to me, is what's needed to make an important decision moving forward. If we're rooted in kind of the emotions around the betrayal and the hurt and things like that, probably not the best time to make a decision for the future of that relationship. But once we get to a point of where like, okay, let me understand what's happening. I can see why they did this as a human. I see their upbringing. That might be a good place to be, in a sense of being balanced, to make decisions that's not rooted purely in kind of the emotions, whether that's grief, whether that's anger, hate, feeling rejected, sadness, whatever.
Take that space and time to heal, right? We often think I just have to muscle through it. Don't. Take however many months it takes you or years to process through and fully heal yourself before you attempt to heal the relationship. We think that healing the relationship has to go first or has to be in tandem. It doesn't.
No.
If you need time for you, and I actually recommend it, take it, because you can't help heal a relationship if you are walking in shattered.
And you're going to get pressure because a lot of people,
yeah.
Especially if they're still wanting the relationship, the person committed betrayal, they will probably experience a lot of impatience because they need to know now. It's not uncomfortable, but that's not on you to resolve their discomfort.
Nope.
And if they decide to leave because you're taking too long, probably not a relationship you wanted anyways then.
That's reflective of them and their ability to allow you room to heal. It's not a healthy partner.
No.
Right? You should be given the space to heal, to process, to feel. Betrayal, again, cuts in the core parts of the self. So it's not expected that this is days or even weeks.
Yeah.
It's months to years.
Yeah.
True betrayals stick with you.
And this is such a fine line because the person who committed the act of betrayal, they're wanting an answer now because it's very uncomfortable. The person who needs time and space to heal, very valid. And that time cannot be used as a weapon either.
Absolutely good point.
Because I see that happen of like, no, give me time. No, give me time. Like that can't happen.
As a power trip.
Yeah. When we're talking about space and time, it means you're doing what you need to exist in a harmonious way, especially if someone, like if it's a romantic relationship, they got to live together. It also means you're giving yourself to work on yourself. The time is to work on yourself, not get satisfaction from holding power over the head because they hurt you.
And you have to actually intentionally use that time, right? Not just saying I'm taking space, then I'm going to the bars with my friends.
I don't want to talk about it. Any space.
Oh, God.
Avoidance.
But actually doing the things.
Yeah.
Sometimes people will talk about, especially like after an affair or whatever, sometimes we'll see partners separate. And then you'll see them go and date and don't do all the things, right? Don't go immerse yourself in other dopamine hits because that's what happens. Let yourself hurt. Let yourself grieve. As uncomfortable as that is, we have to actually lean into that part of it.
Yeah.
Not just cloak it with other ways of making yourself happy.
Because it won't go away at that point.
No.
Until you lean into it. Yeah.
This is why we hear about like rebound relationships. Please don't. Rebounds don't work out. You end up just getting hurt more. Like it's not going to work out. Take the time to really heal so that you don't get further hurt by that person. But also, I said this phrase before, hurt people hurt people. If you're hurting, you are going to wound the people who come in your path.
Intentionally or not.
Yeah. Whether it is the one who hurt you or it's your rebound or it's another friend. If you don't take care of your healing or your kids, they're going to pay the consequence for that.
And if the person doesn't want to give you that time to heal, they need to respect that. And I also hear people wanting to the other partner committed betrayal. We just need to get over it. We need to move past it. I don't want to focus on the past. Let's move forward.
I hear about it so much. Holy Nelly.
If you don't want to focus and be with them in their hurt and pain that you've caused, the person who's betrayed, that's a good sign. Like, this is not someone who respects me.
Facts.
And does not respect and understand what they've done to me. They're more worried about how they feel and it being uncomfortable for them to have to revisit it. And it becomes more about them and less about me again.
100%.
And nope. See ya.
You have to give tolerance if you are the partner who has betrayed. Right? We all make mistakes. This is not a judgment thing.
Yeah.
If you are the partner who has caused the betrayal, now's the time to get real comfortable with the uncomfortable. Go do your own therapy. Talk to your friends. You know, it feels weird opening up about your mistakes. Do it.
You're human. We're all human.
100%.
Yeah.
But for you to create the tolerance to actually see this through, if that's what you really want, you have to work on yourself too. It can't just be the person who got betrayed.
Yeah.
Because something led to your betrayal. Go figure that out. Go figure out where that comes from, whether it's family or your marriage wasn't fulfilling or you were scared or you were desperate or whatever. Figure it out.
Yeah.
Figure out what you could have done different. Figure out what you want to do different. Figure out, do you actually want this relationship? Because if you betrayed them, there is a possibility that you were also trying to get out of it.
Unconsciously.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's okay too.
Yeah.
It's not like you're indebted to the other human either, which is hard to hear if you're the person who's been betrayed.
You're not indebted to them, and they can't. This is the holding over head and power thing. You're not indebted. I mean, if you're planning on staying in a relationship, yeah, there's a lot of repair that needs to happen and
It's
reconciliation
gonna
in that
hurt.
regard. The emotion that typically is the hardest to deal with of people who've betrayed another person is guilt.
Mm-hmm. And sitting with it.
That's what we have, because
Or shame.
from a, like a compassion world, right? Even in that world of research, like we very much hate seeing the loved ones that we care about hurt.
Mm-hmm.
When we're the source of that hurt,
Mm-hmm.
and it's very, very hard to understand. And that often leads us down a path of what you said, like, I'm just going to get some dopamine hits and protective behaviors too, of like, I know that they're not going to want to be with me. I hurt them. I can't even deal with this. I'm going to go drink, or I'm going to go get other dopamine hits. That is a very, very hard emotion to deal with in this.
I'm going to bail out.
It's the easier thing to do, avoidance, right?
And it's not even because bailing out always feels good. It's because it feels less distressing than having to sit and face what I've caused in another human.
And I don't see it moving forward if that person cannot sit through the guilt and manage the guilt. You have to. And this is where that whole, like, I don't want to visit the past. You just don't want to sit in the guilt.
And I hear that statement over and over again. We can't keep living in the past. You got to choose to get over it. Can't keep punishing me. These are phrases we hear in couples therapy or even family therapy all the time. But the reality is, yes, we don't want to carry this past forward with us forever. But if we're going to drop it off at some point, we have to process what it is.
And another factor we talked about a little bit, like the gaslighting piece. And maybe it's true. So in this example where somebody doesn't view what they did as betrayal or infidelity or whatever, it does not matter what your definition is as the person who's betraying. It's the definition and perception of the person who's feeling betrayed.
Facts.
Granted, it gets, this is why I say it's a fine line. You can't have them hold it over your head of like, no, this is because how I feel. Like, you may not feel that way, but if this is someone you care and respect about, you got to let go of your definition, understand that this is what's happening for them, and sit in the guilt. And I feel like those two things are really important in order to reconcile and move forward and repair if they want that relationship to work. If that doesn't happen, you're still dealing with a lot of those guilt kind of avoidant and the maladaptive kind of approaches to manage the guilt. And that just leads to unhealthy dynamics down the road.
If you're the one who's been betrayed, there has to come a point, if you decide to stay in relationship, friendship with this person, where you decide you're not going to bring it up anymore, where you decide it's not going to be weaponized.
Yeah.
It can still be a memory, but I'm not going to use it as a tool to, well, I wouldn't have been mean to you if you didn't cheat on me 5 years ago or whatever.
Oh my goodness.
Part of that growth of letting that go is figuring out what you need to get through this. So if that's therapy or friends or taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
But part of the friend thing, I want to point this out. You cannot, hear me on this, cannot just surround yourself with the friends that are going to validate you, tell you how the other person's a piece of shit and all the things in between.
Yeah.
You also need the friends that are going to say, okay, what was your role? Okay, you can't wallow in this forever. I'm gonna let you lick your wounds for a while. But sister, we got to get out of this mud.
Yeah.
You got to have the friends that also push you towards growth, towards healing, towards personal accountability or acceptance.
Seeing humanness.
Yeah. Having that person that says like, man, that's shitty that happened. I wonder why they did that. I wonder if they were hurting too. I wonder if they learned this from their growing up experiences.
Yeah.
You need those friends or that therapist too, not just the ones that affirm your biased narrative. Because even if the facts are the facts, you still have a biased narrative.
Yeah.
And you still need people to look at the whole picture with you and challenge you in that perspective.
Yeah. And I would say too, my suggestion would pick one, maybe two very close friends that are not mutual. We just, what we call triangulation, right? Is like, here now this third person comes in, and this person inadvertently, without the intention of either pairing, whatever that is, couple relationship, parent, child, whatever, without the intention of trying to throw you in and have you pick sides, it inadvertently does that. And find a couple, right? We want to avoid the triangulation. We want to avoid those
Mhm.
biases, like you said. But getting the outside parties, the therapist, stuff like that,
Mhm.
there's going to be a little bit more objectivity there that I think is important. Because we also don't want to like throw friends into there, right?
Mhm.
Some are very well capable, like you said, the ones who can keep a balanced perspective and see that, like, absolutely.
I can still treat the other person with dignity if they see them,
Absolutely.
right? Knowing who those people are.
Yeah, you're not wanting to pick friends where you just want them to choose your side and now it's like team whatever.
Right? Or World War III for the other human. We don't want that.
Yeah.
Right? Fighting hurt with more hurt. We often see this, right? So and so cheated on me, so now I'm going to go vandalize their car,
Yeah.
or I'm going to destroy them on social media. Don't.
Yeah.
That actually doesn't serve anybody, including you.
Yeah.
Might feel good for that hot second, but in the reality, people are going to look at that and be like, whoa. And they're going to have judgment about it, right?
And I want to tap into the hurt piece and this idea of self-blame. I really want to hone in on that because I know we touched on it, but it's coming up even more for me when we're talking about this is when I see people, it is so hard not to blame ourselves when we're betrayed.
112%.
Why? Am I not good enough? Am I not worth enough? Am I not pretty enough? Or am I not handsome enough? Am I not manly or whatever enough, right? There's all these questions. And if there's any place to start, that's the place to start working with a professional or on yourself is self-compassion.
Which is hard.
It's very hard. It's not your fault. It's not because anything's wrong with you. We're all humans. Okay, just because like when we talked earlier about the responsibility piece, that doesn't mean something's wrong with you. It means you're human.
Or that you deserved the behavior.
Or you deserved it. Exactly. Like even if we did play a role in like, oh, I have not been engaging, I haven't been dealing with my depression or whatever. Yes. Okay. That makes sense. It still does not mean you're a bad person. Something's wrong with you. That you deserved it.
As a human who I myself identify with a lot of betrayal and trauma. Anyone who knows me knows that my present and past are littered with it. It is really hard to not lean into that place of, man, if this keeps happening, if I keep getting betrayed, surely it's me. I hear clients even say, like, I'm the common denominator. So therefore, I should shut everyone out. I am not worthy. I'm not good enough, whatever it might be. And that's a really hard narrative to combat.
When you have multiple data points.
Oof.
Yeah.
It's beastie. And we don't know why it happens in clusters.
And there one theory that I like that helps kind of depersonalize it a lot is that I don't want to use that language. The people who tend to betray and even if I want to go as far as say do shitty things maliciously, they unconsciously seek out people, not because of who you are, but because where their homeostasis is and what they need. Like I think about somebody who doesn't really like themselves. They don't love themselves. And the only kind of love they know is what they saw in that relationship growing up. Right. So probably one parent of theirs didn't love themselves. So they find them maybe more secure person.
Sure.
And they treat them just as their parent did. This is all unconscious stuff. And it may be that just kind of the ambiance that you have, which is not your fault at all, draws people.
I think of narcissism, right? Narcissistic people tend to choose more subservient partners.
Yes.
Why? Because you can't have a narcissist and a narcissist in the same room. They'll tear each other apart.
How do we exist in this room together?
So you tend, if you're that subservient partner and you say like, why do I keep attracting the douchebags? Because your gentleness serves that type of personality. It doesn't mean something's wrong with you. It means that someone may unintentionally or even intentionally exploit that part of you.
Yep.
And there are other kinds of personalities that also will appreciate your gentleness, right? Just because it's cyclical does not mean it's your fault.
Who you are is beautiful, but it doesn't mean that someone's not going to exploit it.
112%.
And that means that nothing's wrong with you for who you are. Does that mean like, hey, I keep attracting these people. Maybe I should look at not changing who I am, but putting a little bit more boundaries up, stepping back a little bit and being assertive or whatever this means is, but it doesn't mean you have to change who you are because it's not your fault that they're responding that way.
Or trust, right? In my own narratives or other people's narratives that I've heard is this sense of, I trust people easily and then they betray me. Well, shit, now I can't trust anybody.
Yeah.
Because that's a flaw in my end. So now I'm just going to completely cut off trust altogether. That's not healthy either.
Yeah, I love that you bring that up because that's one of the most common fallouts of being betrayed is that we stop trusting anybody, and now we can't develop healthy relationships in the future.
Or even cut out all the other people who are still solid humans in our life.
Yeah.
Because if that person could do that to me,
Yeah.
what can they all do to me? So then I cut everyone
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. So no matter what you decide in terms of where this relationship's going moving
Mhm.
forward, friendship, parent-child, whatever, a
Mhm.
romantic relationship, it's important to know that working through it is a priority for the mere fact that it's going to be the means by which you develop or not develop
Mhm.
a healthy relationship down the way or keep the current healthy relationships.
Working through the betrayal and your forgiveness, not necessarily working through the relationship.
Yes.
Not reconciling. Reconciling, if you choose that, that's one avenue. It is not a prerequisite to forgiveness.
And to me, this comes in the attachment work.
Sure.
Because after you're betrayed, clearly some attachment anxiety might come up or attachment, whatever it might be. And so working with that attachment to feel a little bit more secure is going to lead to those healthier relationships or even healthier decisions about relationships. So
we refer to it as baggage all the time, right? People bring in baggage. Are you dealing with your baggage, or are you bringing this lack of trust, this sense of betrayal, this feeling of now I got to check their phone, now I got to check their bank statements, now I got to check all these things into my next partnership?
Yep.
They didn't earn that distrust. You can't put on the next one.
Yeah.
And I share this about myself of being a person who's experienced betrayal to offer compassion, but also insight that even those of us who I literally teach healthy relationships, even those of us who may look like, oh, they've got all the tools, may not, or may experience these pains too. You are not alone. It's far more common than we actually talk about.
Yeah.
And once you start talking about it, you're going to find that even your inner circle is going to say, oh yeah, I went through something similar too. And then they're going to start talking.
Yeah.
Betrayal happens far more than we talk about because everyone keeps it in with shame.
Yeah.
Talk about it with your safe people. Process it. Don't just try to sit and fester on it yourself.
And by safe, we mean don't talk to people who are going to start comparing who has it worse.
Ugh, gosh.
The Betrayal Olympics.
Oh, Lord. Or who put you down or tell you it's no big deal. That is not a safe person.
You'll get over it. You'll move through it, honey. That's not helpful.
That's life. You get over it.
Oh, God. Yeah.
My favorite phrase.
There's nothing more invalidating in somebody's own experience by saying, you'll get over it.
It's not that bad.
You should hear what happened to me.
Or, well, you should have known better. We hear all these phrases, and then the person who receives those phrases actually internalizes it. So if you are not the betrayer, you are not the betrayed, but you are the supporter, please cut those phrases out.
Yep.
Be curious. Ask open-ended questions.
What do you need right now?
Give them love.
Yeah.
They're hurting, and you're sitting there like, I don't know why the hell this hurts you so much. It doesn't matter what you think. What matters is you see this person you care about hurting. Operate from a place of comfort.
And curiosity.
Not from a place of condemnation or judging or putting fuel in the fire by saying, wow, they are such a piece of shit. You should leave. La la la. You can't do it.
Yeah. The worst part about that, if you're a supporter and you're like, yeah, team, whatever, your friend.
Right.
And then all of a sudden they get back together. Oh, awkward.
It's super awkward.
Awkward. Yeah, I can't be around them. And then that friendship dissipates. Just be there to support. And I like curiosity, and not curiosity of like, well, what'd you do to deserve this? I mean, and
it happens all the time.
I mean, curiosity and like, what do you need right now? What would be helpful?
Why is this so painful for you?
What? Yeah, exactly.
Tell me where this hurt comes from for you.
What's happening for you right now? Thinking about it.
What kinds of things are going through your mind? How can I support?
You're not the therapist, and you're not expected to be. So don't try to be there to that extent, especially if you don't have capacity. So know your own boundaries and say, I'd love to talk about this. Can we sit down for coffee? And like set it to where maybe you can control it or something, right? Things like that.
Because it can be heavy on the support system too. Not just the two, typically two, it's dyad, but sometimes it's more. But not just the people that were betrayed or betraying, but your support system, it can be heavy on them to see the fallout, to know, am I supposed to pick a side? Am I not? To know the right things to say. As a supporter, it's okay to also get your own support, unbiased, unrelated support, right? But also to have those boundaries of, wow, this feels really big and I don't know how to help you through it.
Yeah.
Offer support in the ways that do feel authentic to you.
Even when finding a therapist, there are therapists who will join you and be like, that person sucks. Why?
all the time. That's not a good therapist.
That's not necessarily
Ugh.
good what they're doing. And find one that's going to challenge questions on both sides, right?
Yeah.
And like for me, there's some clients where I focus more. So for me personally, as a therapist, I'll see where the client's mind is at, and I'll challenge the opposite.
Sure.
And I tell them, like, this is not a reflection of what I believe. I just see where your mind's at. So let me ask these questions.
Explore.
To try to get balance and perspective. That's really my goal, is like, if you're going to make a decision that's going to be this important, especially whether to stay, or an earlier episode we had, which was end or mend, right? The relationship. If you're in that decision, it's really important that you're in a place that has perspective. And this is why it's like, I'm asking these questions not because I think you should leave. I'm not asking these questions because I think you should stay.
True.
I really don't have an opinion. This is not my relationship.
Nope.
But going to someone who's going to challenge, a therapist, who's going to ask questions like, okay, say you acknowledge and accept the influence of your role, and you know that you don't deserve it despite what you're doing, right? This is a responsibility for both of you guys to talk, figure this out before that gets to that point of what is betrayal for you. Would anything change on the other end of the cycle if you changed your side? Right? Like, how do you foresee this in the future if this were to happen? Based on your values now and who you are, is this something you see moving forward?
Sure.
Based on your spiritual or religious beliefs, what does that say of who you have to be now moving forward in this?
And your therapist can validate. They can say, yeah, that wasn't a healthy choice on their end, or infidelity is incredibly painful.
And that it's not your fault.
Right.
They can absolutely tell you that.
But if they are just sitting there cranking you up, not great. Same with friends, same with family. It can feel good in the moment to have someone crank us up and be like, yeah, they are a piece of shit. Here's when we say in the long term, that does not promote healing. That promotes vindictiveness and resentment and some of those really big, painful emotions that don't go away.
Yeah.
If you don't take care of them.
One important question that I find that has to be asked, no matter the betrayal, because it's in a relationship where there's trust, is, why do you need this relationship?
Big one.
Why do you need it? And you may find that you don't, and you may find that you do. And I mean, in general, I don't think anyone needs a relationship.
What function does it serve?
But like, what function? It's more in that sense of like, what function does it serve? Like, why is this important to you? What permission do you need to make your decision?
Why do you want to choose it?
Yeah.
Why do you not want to choose it?
Yeah.
Really exploring both sides. What if I don't choose to stay in a relationship? What are some of the fallout, the ramifications of that?
Yeah.
If I do choose to stay, what's some of the fallout or ramifications of that?
Yeah.
Exploring it from all angles is really important, because what you don't want is to make a choice because someone riled you up and then you regret that choice later. You want to come at this choice from a clear head, a place of healing, and a wholehearted perspective in order to actually feel solid in that, how you're moving forward.
Yeah, and I would say the majority, not all, the majority of the time when I ask a client to picture both worlds or decisions moving forward, I want them to be aware of what happens to their body, what happens to their emotions, what do they feel? And sometimes you get one is more relaxed than the other. And then I explore that. Why does that seem more comfortable for you to make that decision? Boom. Like, I mean, you can get, they start identifying reasons, and it's like, oh.
And that's why it takes time. Your brain to unpack the full history, to unpack the full situation, to feel all the feels, to process through those, like, oh, I didn't think of that moment, takes time. You cannot rush it. Forgiveness requires several elements, but one of them is time. You cannot rush, change, swap out time for anything else. Time is time. You have to accept that piece. Other pieces include, did they reconcile? Did they do, or did they make amends? Did they
accept influence?
Engage in what is positive corrective experiences over and over again?
Yeah.
Are they doing something different and showing me they can do it on repeat? Right? There are lots of elements to this, but that one piece of time, there is no substitute. You have to give it proper time, which is hard. Trust me, it's hard.
Very hard.
Oof. Betrayal. Welcome to the new year.
Welcome.
We start with the heaviest of topics. Betrayal, again, is more pervasive than we probably even realize, because people keep it bottled up, whether it's out of their own shame, protection of that other person, fear. There can be a whole host of reasons. Especially
with the holidays recently and the elections here in the United States. It's come up a lot, and I think this is why it was on our agenda.
Yeah. So as always, if anyone has any topic suggestions, feedback, anything of the sort, Feel free to email us at relationshipsinsideout@gmail.com. Thanks.
Thanks.